Welcome back, everyone, to the eCoreAcademy e-learning platform. Thank you all for joining us. Please make sure to subscribe down below, hit that like button on this video, as well as turning on post notifications, because today is going to be a really nice video. It's going to be presented by me, AJay Raj, and I'm going to be continuing with the lymphatic system in the anatomy and physiology course. We're going to be taking a look at lymphatic structures. And also, feel free to leave comments down below in the comment section. So do all of those three things, and also feel free to add your feedback in the comment section. It won't go unnoticed. We'll try and implement them in videos that are going to be upcoming. So we really do appreciate your input, and we really do listen to it as well. So lymphatic structures, what exactly is this lesson comprised of, and what is it all about? So we're going to be taking a look at some of the major structures in the lymphatic system, and also what their functions are. So we're going to be looking at the overall structures, what they're designed by, what are some of their molecular components, and how they actually look, some of their visualizations, some graphics that I'm going to be walking you through. And also I'm going to be utilizing some text to explain some functions to you. It's important that we know what things are purposed for in order to identify what the location is, and overall what their effect will be for the entirety of the system and in turn for the body. Anatomy and physiology is all about the human body. So we all know what it's like, and it's somewhat relatable to all of us because we're all human beings. So let's jump right into it. So before we get into this lesson, I just want to make sure that you guys have all watched the lymphatic system overview. Every student that's watching this, I'll link it down in the description below the previous video, the lymphatic system overview. I really do introduce this topic, shine some light on it, give some background information and some fundamentals. So I really would prefer that you watch that video before watching this one, because this will just merely be a continuation off of that. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. We're going to be starting off with lymph capillaries, which is what I ended off with in the lymphatic system overview. So we all know that most of us are probably here for Science Olympiad. Some of you have referred to anatomy and physiology as, a course in school that you might be taking. But in the United States, you might be utilizing Science Olympiad, notes and competitions. Anatomy and physiology is basically a historical event that's always been utilized in Science Olympiad. It's one of the very first events. And of course, it has to do with the body and its different systems. So anatomy, meaning the study of separate organs and separate identifying organs and organelles within the given body. And then physiology is study of those systems, how they link together, how they work together, and what do they produce overall in contribution towards the body overall, and keeping it sustainable, keeping it running, keeping it up and running. So we're going to be looking at lymph capillaries. Lymph capillaries are very important in the actual test itself because it correlates with one of the sister systems that goes along with this all the time. So it's excretory lymphatic system and cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular system is heavily related to lymph capillaries due to the fact that it has to do with the blood flow. So the cardiovascular system has to do with the heart and the pumping of blood and transportation of oxygen all throughout the human body. So these lymph capillaries are going to be a very important role in attaching the lymphatic system to the cardiovascular system. So this is part one of lymph capillaries. And this is just continuing off of what we left off of for the lymphatic system overview, a bit of a review. So let's look at the functions of lymph capillaries. So lymph capillaries are tiny, thin-walled structures that are found in even spaces between cells. And what they do is they contribute to the overall purpose of the lymphatic system. They help draining out extracellular fluid from the lumen of the cell or lymph. So the lumen of the cell is located near the nucleus, or that very center of your cell, near where all the chromosomes and the DNA is stored. And they're presented in tiny sacs filled with this creamy white coating that is basically consistent of this lymph combined with other materials that are necessary for the given cell, and that are being comprised of items that the cell is actually being replenished of. Some things that really need to be fulfilled within the cell. And all of these lymph capillaries, no two are going to be the same, not just in structure, but in purpose. All of these lymph capillaries work together, but in groups and sections. We know that tissues are comprised of a certain type of cell and a certain type of organ or an organelle on a certain area. And likewise, these lymph capillaries are going to be specialized towards these specific tissues. And they have protective endothelial wall-like layers that basically circle around and wrap around these blood capillaries that transport blood all throughout the body. So if you think about a lymph capillary, you can just think about this small item. It's like a sac, basically, and it has lymph and combined materials. combinations of materials, and that's through enzymes, but we will get into that later, what exactly this means. This is just a basic generic word that I'm trying to utilize without going into the complexity of it. And also what it does is not only does it basically replenish the cell, in which it has an input of fluid that's going into your cell. So if this is your cell, any cell, this can be a red blood cell, a white blood cell, an antibody, any of these cells that comprise your body, an animal cell, just a regular animal cell, let's generalize it, things that make up the human body. And what they will do is they'll input these combined materials that are needed, these sac-like structures basically collect these items. And what it'll also do, these lymph capillaries will also drain out fluid. So here you have the combined materials, and it's going to drain out through lymph, unnecessary fluid. Unnecessary fluid. And you can kind of think about this as, a generic view. We know that humans, we excrete items in both liquid form and solid form through our waste. And also, that's going to be very similar. This is basically a broken down structure of what is actually happening. This lymph is actually going to be like your excretory system. It's going to help you excrete any of the necessary items that need to be excreted from a given cell. And this is going to be in forms of fluid, not solid waste. Unlike our body, we can both transfer it into two different forms, depending on what type of item we're consuming, such as carbon. And that's not going to be available for these given specialized cells. Lymph capillaries part 2. Let's look at a diagram. Let's break this apart. I also showed you this in the lymphatic overview, but I'm just going to explain it in more depth. So capillaries, they consist of liquid solvents, large solutes, and whole cells that can pass through it, and they deoxidize the bad oxygen. So that's your input and output bursts. It has to have some sort of consistency in that aspect, meaning it has to have equilibrium, meaning equal in and equal out within the cell. Otherwise, the cell, might shrivel up because it does not have enough material, or it might start to swell up and become too big and eventually burst. So as you can see here, this lymphatic vessel has a bunch of lymphatic capillaries within it, and it's basically wrapping itself around the bloodstream, what's conducting this blood transfer. And these are your arterioles and your venules, and that's basically they're combining, and I'll explain that later. Anita already explained these in her cardiovascular system notes. So I really would recommend that you watch these videos in anatomy and physiology as it goes, because they all really do link together. But please make sure you watch that one. And what these lymphatic vessels do is they wrap around these arterioles and these venules, and basically they help transfer this system in which they replenish, and they also get rid of waste. And the bloodstream is probably the easiest way in order to do so. It goes across the entirety of the body, and it's the largest one. It's the largest circulatory system. It's the largest circulating system throughout the body. And it's very important that these lymphatic vessels intertwine and get correlated in such a manner. Lymph vessels, part 1. So we're going to look at lymph vessels and look at their functions. So lymph vessels are thin-walled, valve-like structures that carry lymph liquid to lymph tissue. So these are responsible for the networking and the transfer of lymph, and not just being organelles. These are transfers and channels. And they carry lymph liquid to lymph tissues, and they're lined with endothelial protection, the extra layer of protection. And they have a thin layer of smooth vessels and adventia, or adventia. You can call it adventia or adventia. That's the Greek form right here, adventia. But it's called adventia, that binds it to cells. And adventia is basically also known as an enzyme, but it's also a liquid that almost acts like glue. And it's something that signals for this thin layers of these lymph vessels to attach to certain molecules, to absorb them within their structure, basically suck them in if necessary, and reject them if they have adventia on them. And these enzymes basically coat these given cells that need to enter with adventia for those lymph vessels to actually accept them. But that's for later on when we get into enzymes and our different systems. And when small capillaries merge with others to form larger lymphatic vessels, they're what kind of resemble the veins in our body. Remember, it's what wraps around our arterioles and our venules to bloodstream. So these are basically all across your bloodstream. The lymphatic system can be considered as a subset of not only the immune system, but in this case, of the cardiovascular system. And it has a sensitive ending that causes only one direction for the lymph, for the travel of lymph. So if you're thinking of a clock, and you're moving in a clockwise direction, there is no anti-clockwise direction, meaning it's going to move in the same manner of a clock from the top all the way across, and that's going to be representative of all the way throughout the body. And I'll show you what the channels look like, but they're never going to go against each other. However, it does travel against the normal flow of the blood. But blood is circulatory; it travels in all directions. Lymph vessels, part 2, functions continued. So the structure includes 3 outer wall layers that are to be endothelial and thin. So lymph vessels have 3 endothelial layers that gives them that extra coating and that extra protection. And if we just think about this, guys, these items are very, very, very small. They only have one epithelial cell, a layer, which is basically your interior layer, your soft layer, that has a membrane that allows anything to seep through. These are just protective layers that are on the outside. And the lymphatic vessels are probably your thickest lymphatic structures. They have one-way valves, but consist of various endings. Remember, those sensitive endings only allow for one motion, a one-directional flow of your current of lymph, and it cannot contradict itself. And it has lymph nodes, which I'll get into later, which are your minor organs of the lymphatic system. And they create lumps of intervals throughout its course, acting as a tube wrap around the entire body. And these lymphatic nodes are basically like these receptors that basically transfer these materials into the lymph fluid itself. Transferring it in fluid form is probably the easiest manner to transfer everything within the body. And they basically are like checkpoints. They check these lymphatic fluid to see if it's infected or to see if it has too much of a given concentration. And they converge to increase in size, and they join afferent and efferent vessels, which I'll get into later. But these are 2 types of vessels. Some have immunizing approaches, and some have to do with the lymphatic, actually pumping the lymph through the body. And the lymphatic vessels, they actually generate their force also through the blood, through the heart. So they have that pump consistent because of the heart itself. Lymph vessel structure. So let's look at the overall structure. So lymph vessel structures include a venule, an arteriole, loose connective tissue around the capillaries, blood capillaries, lymphatic capillaries, tissue cells, filaments anchored to connective tissue, endothelial cells, mini valves, and fibroblasts. So don't get worried. I'm just going to introduce these to you guys. This is all about an introduction, and then I'm going to get into each and every one of these little sections on their own. So basically, arterioles and venules. Venules are basically what transfers lymph in the actual vessel itself. So it's like a pump. An arteriole is that channel that's going to consist of loose connective tissues around capillaries that are located within these vessels. So we have these organs like the lymph nodes and the capillaries that are located within your lymphatic vessels that help to transfer lymph and have some specific immunizing and homeostatic processes with that. And then we have blood capillaries going in and out, lymphatic capillaries. We have the tissue cell that basically wraps around that given vessel. And we have these fibroblasts. So if we look at the lymphatic vessel itself, you see how it has these little valves here. And that's how it basically releases how much lymph the body requires it to release. And the direction is always going to be consistent, meaning it's always going to go up, as shown in this picture right here. It's always going to go up. And the valves close in certain areas. For certain organs of certain parts of the body that need that homeostasis, that equilibrium of fluids. Now let's look at lymphatic ducts. So looking at the structure, lymphatic ducts are basically a generalized term for lymphatic trunks, and I'll explain they basically mean the same thing. Lymphatic ducts are an overall term, and I'm going to explain what the lymphatic ducts are, but I'm just going to look specifically to lymphatic trunks. And lymphatic trunks are a collection of lymph vessels that carry the liquid lymph, and these lymphatic trunks are located on different parts of the spine, and they're formed by joining the positive type of efferent vessels to the afferent vessels, which are negative, and it drains into either of the 2 major lymphatic ducts, which are basically your drainage points, and they're located near these major joints, and they're known as the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct, and that's also determined by the spine itself, but I'll get into what those are. And then we have trunk anastomos, and they're basically trunks and anastomos are basically entrance points for all of this draining liquid to enter, and they enter through the venous region at these joint parts, and they exit through these veins. So the veins, just as the bloodstream would have veins, the lymphatic system has veins to display the rest of the content to the rest of the body. And some of these lymphatic trunks are known as the lumbar trunk, the bronchomediastal, the subclavian, jugular, and intestinal. They're located across different points of the spine, but I will get into that later as well. All right, everyone, so that'll be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Visit our website at www.ecoreacademy.org. Feel free to leave a comment as well. Contact us at eCoreAcademy@gmail.com if you have any questions. And please check out that website. Like I said, we have a lot of featured content there. We have notes sheets, worksheets, and quizzes that you can access completely for free if you make an account. And not everything on our YouTube channel is found on our website, but not everything on our website is found on our YouTube channel, but everything is going to be found on our website. So all the content, all the note sheets, what we offer as an e-learning platform basically is going to be available there. So please make sure you guys check it out. Also, look in the description box below. We have our socials at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Full link is down there to access. See what kind of interesting content we have there and use those mediums to share all of our videos. Once again, everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a blast making it. This has been AJay Raj, and I hope you guys have a great weekend, whatever time it is, whatever time of the year it is. Enjoy those weekends, work hard during the week, and enjoy those weekends and earn your relaxation time. So, so that'll be it for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.